Welcome to The Explainer. I am super excited you're joining me today because we are going to unpack a really brilliant, timeless story. It's a tale that dives deep into the complexities of companionship, pure intentions, and the absolute shock of unintended consequences. Really, it's a narrative that forces us to look way past what people mean to do and focus heavily on what they actually end up doing.
So let me ask you something right off the bat. Can a true, completely sincere friend actually cause your greatest harm? I know, it sounds totally counterintuitive, right? We usually just assume that sincerity and love act as this sort of bulletproof shield against harm. Like if someone means well, how could they possibly be dangerous to us? Well, today's explainer takes that exact assumption and flips it entirely upside down. We're going to look at a scenario where pure, unfiltered loyalty leads to an unbelievably shocking outcome.
All right, let's get into part one, start of a unique friendship. The lonely woodcutter meets Chiku. So our story centers around a guy named Rehman. He was a humble woodcutter living right at the edge of this remarkably deep and dense forest. And every single day, he followed the exact same routine. He'd venture out into the woods, chop his timber, and then carry it all the way down to the city to sell. On the surface, his life was incredibly peaceful. No drama, no conflict, but beneath all that quiet routine lay a profound, really heavy emptiness. You know, humans are inherently social creatures. We crave connection. We want shared experiences. But Rehman, he didn't have a single friend in the world to share his thoughts with, let alone a meal. He was living his life in total isolation, just carrying this silent weight of loneliness every time he walked back into his empty house. Well, one day, taking a quick break from his grueling work, Rahman was sitting in the shade of a massive tree, just quietly eating his bread. All of a sudden, he hears this rustling of leaves right above his head. He looks up and he spots a small monkey. Now, the animal wasn't acting aggressive or anything. Instead, it was just staring with this deep, longing hunger at Rahman's humble little meal. So, driven by simple human compassion, Rahman just breaks off a piece of his bread and tosses it up into the branches. In a flash, the monkey swiftly catches the bread and starts devouring it with sheer delight. And honestly, in that one tiny moment of sharing food, a beautiful, incredibly unusual bond was born. Moving right along to part two, true friendship and loyalty, a bond built on sharing. Rahman actually decided to name his new little companion Chiku. And what developed between them wasn't just some one-sided dynamic where a human casually feeds a stray animal. No, there was beautiful reciprocity here. Whenever Rahman walked into the forest, Chiku would enthusiastically swing through the branches to come greet him. Rahman would always make sure to bring treats from home, things like bananas and fresh bread. And in return, Chiku would scale the absolute highest, hardest-to-reach branches of the forest canopy just to pluck the sweetest, most delicious wild fruits. Then, he'd drop them right down into Rahman's hands. It was this perfect, balanced exchange of care. Before long, Chiku became far more than just a wild animal looking for a daily handout. He really transformed into a true, fiercely devoted companion. That crushing loneliness that had plagued Rahman's life for so long completely vanished. It was replaced by this constant, comforting presence. Basically, Chiku became Rahman's shadow. Wherever Rahman went, Chiku followed, eventually even walking with the woodcutter all the way back to his home at the edge of the woods. They were utterly inseparable, which just goes to show that profound connections can sometimes bridge the gap between entirely different species. Now for part three, tough test of friendship, the protective guard and the fly. Picture this, it's a terribly hot and exhausting afternoon. Rahman is completely drained from chopping wood. He can barely keep his eyes open. Trying to find a little relief, he spreads out a simple sheet under the thick canopy of a dense tree and instantly crashes into a heavy, deep sleep. Now, instead of running off to play in the forest, Chiku immediately takes up a post right beside his friend. He just sits there faithfully acting as this dedicated, fiercely loyal guard to ensure that absolutely nothing is going to disturb Rahman's well-earned rest. But then, out of nowhere, a large, poisonous fly swoops down, and it lands squarely right on the sleeping Rahman's face. Chiku, ever the vigilant guard, immediately waves his hands, shooing the pesky thing away. But you know how flies are. This one is incredibly stubborn. Seconds later, it buzzes right back down. Only this time, it lands directly on Rahman's nose. Chiku's frustration absolutely spikes. He is not going to let this tiny intruder win. So, in a rapid, desperate escalation, the monkey reaches over and he grabs Rahman's heavy, deadly woodcutting axe. You have to pause and look at Chiku's internal motivation here. His thought process is super simple, yet fiercely protective. He's thinking, this fly is ruining my friend's sleep. I won't spare it. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the tragedy. Chiku's intentions are entirely pure. He is operating out of a profound love for his companion. He sees a clear threat to his friend's peace, and he is determined to eliminate it at all costs, completely and totally unaware of the disaster that's about to happen. But here is the fatal flaw: a complete lack of human sense. A monkey, no matter how loving or devoted, just doesn't possess the rational foresight of a human. As that fly settles right back onto Rockman's nose, Chiku isn't calculating the physics, the inherent danger, or the irreversible consequences of what he's about to do. He just aims at the pest, raises that massive, heavy iron axe high up into the air, and brings it crashing down onto Rockman's face with his absolute full force. Which brings us to the final act, Part 4, Lesson of the Foolish Friend, the Tragic Cost of Good Intentions. The aftermath of this strike is immediate, it's bloody, and it is entirely tragic. That tiny, nimble fly, of course, it senses the movement and easily buzzes away, completely unharmed. But the heavy blade of the axe absolutely finds its mark, violently striking Rehman right on the nose. The peaceful silence of that forest is instantly shattered. Rehman wakes up screaming in agonizing pain, his face completely bloodied. And the poor monkey, he looks down at this gruesome scene, utterly terrified by what he's just done. Realizing his horrific mistake, Chiku just bursts into cries of distress and scrambles desperately high up into the safety of the nearest tree. As Rehman sits up, just clutching his bleeding face in absolute agony, he looks up at the sobbing monkey hiding up in the branches. And in that painful, chaotic moment, a really profound realization washes over him. He understands instantly that Chiku didn't do this out of hatred or enmity. There was zero malice in that axe swing. It was an act born entirely out of foolish, unintelligent love. Rehman's greatest harm actually came from the one single creature trying hardest to protect him. The physical wound was obviously deep, but honestly, that psychological realization was far heavier to bear. So, this entire story distills down perfectly into a timeless moral truth. A wise enemy is better than a foolish friend. Why? Well, because an enemy's intentions are clear. A wise enemy operates with a logic that you can actually anticipate and defend against. But a foolish friend, that's a total wild card. Even while they are actively trying to help you, their sheer stupidity and lack of judgment can end up causing you devastating harm. It's just a powerful, lasting reminder that good intentions alone are never enough. They absolutely have to be paired with wisdom and foresight. To wrap things up today, I really want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Have you ever experienced harm from someone who honestly just wanted the best for you? It's a pretty complex, maybe even uncomfortable reality to face in our own relationships. Take a little time to think about the Chicos in your life, or, hey, even times when you might have inadvertently been the foolish friend yourself. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today to unpack this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.